Recording. Change management is one of the um, processes that's described in ITIL. Very important process in ITIL. You may remember that there's 26 processes in ITIL, and one of those is incident management. We've talked about that and the service desk as it relates to incidents management, and then there's problem management, which sort of is related to that as well. Um, did you want to say something? Somebody there is speaking. I'll mute you. You can unmute yourselves if you want to say something. Um, so we have incidents management, which is our service desk, um, uh, something like OTRS software that you guys have worked with. Problem management grows out of that, and then or is related to that, and then from problem management, we need to sort of consider our change management. That is, in problem management, we determine the root cause of something that's causing a lot of outages, incidents. So that's what we call a problem. And once we've identified the root cause, then often we find that there's something in the system that needs to be changed. And that leads us to this idea of change management. Change management isn't just about growing out of problem management, however, because change management is also about making sure that we don't do changes that are unnecessary or don't work. Yes, hello, Khulud as well. I will get you guys and mark you later. Don't leave the meeting until I've marked you on the roll, though. Um, so change management is very much about ITIL or related to ITIL. You can do change management without following an ITIL technique, though, of course. I'll just go to student arrived. So hold on a sec. I don't follow the rules. You guys won't, will you? Don't know how I'm gonna drink my drink like this though. Um, so the goals here are referring to um, what we want to achieve when we implement change management. And if you look at those things, we got words like recorded, evaluated, authorized, planned, documented. I hope that you notice the concept there of control. What we want to get through our change management being a control. We want to control any changes that are made in our systems, in our IT system. And so if you look at this life cycle, if you want to call it a life cycle, where a change is requested, if we're implementing change control, or change management, we won't be just making changes just because somebody makes a request. We will have to analyze that change and it'll have to go through an approval process. And then once we've made the change, we'll have to review it. Now, down here in this corner of the slide, where I'm circling with my mouse at the moment, that is a video link. If you follow that link, so what I recommend you do is either download this presentation that we're talking about now, or just open it in D2L. But please follow and watch that video. I'm not going to go through that because you can do that in your own time. But it's about 5 minutes where there's a cartoon character, I guess you'd say, who explains very well the concept of change management in an IT environment. And so, actually, a lot of the notes in this slide deck seem to reference that. Okay, so if we are implementing change management, then our systems should be more efficient and should cost us less to change them. That's the idea of it. We want our systems to be in control all the time, or we want to be in control of our systems, and we want to do that as cheaply and as effectively as possible. And I hope that you see that those things, that's what that's about. Keep our systems efficient, keep our systems working correctly. If we don't implement change management, if we don't have any change management processes, then these things might show up as symptoms of that. The fact that we don't have change management, we're likely to have changes on the system happening without people authorizing them. We're likely to have outages, more incidents occurring, etc. Actually, one of the things that we noted is one of the I think it is the number one cause, according to some people, the number one cause of incidents in an IT environment are changes that have not been implemented correctly. Okay, so that should underline for us how important it is to control changes when we make a change on a system. If we don't implement it correctly, we are actually going to be causing more problems for our customers than if we didn't do anything about it at all, quite possibly. And so it's very important that we do make changes to our system as required, but it's important that we do it in a correct way. And that's why we don't let people make changes without authorization. That's why the prioritization is about we only prioritization is going to determine when we make the changes, right? The very highest priority changes, they're going to be made first. Low priority changes, we can still make them, but only after other things. And so we prioritize depending on the type of change request it is. And there's a it's mentioned in the video, but we've got a slide here where it talks about the four R's. And according to the four R's, which is who requested the change, et cetera. We'll see all those. There's seven of them actually. Depending on that, we determine a priority. The priority will also relate to, we've got a quadrant of importance and urgency. Is it very important and is it very urgent? Then the priority is high. And so we'll talk about that too. But uh, according to the priority, the higher the priority, then we fix on those and do those first. The centralized management point is really, really quite important. That comes back to control. If we're going to have our system in control, the only really way to do that, we can't have 25 people making the decisions. There must be a single point where the final decisions are made on the system. That's what we mean by centralized control, that we have a single point there that will do that. And usually that will be provided by the management structure. All right, so the next couple of slides in the deck here, they refer to the different types of changes. So we've got standard changes, we've got normal changes, and we've got emergency changes. Your standard change, now notice this would be like changing a password. These kind of changes, the business knows about them very well. The IT people know about these changes very well. And so we have a pre-authorization or a pre-approval. We don't have to go and get anybody's signature to go and change a password. We can just do this sort of in a very simple process with as little paperwork as necessary. Okay, so with a normal change, you are going to require some authorization and some paperwork, I guess you would say, is going to go with that. But that's going to be very clearly outlined, and we'll do that authorization first, and then we'll make the change. That's a normal change. Now, as opposed to emergency change, with your emergency change, you got this very high priority because of urgency and because of importance. Urgency means it needs to happen now. And so it's a case of we need to restore our system. So we go and do the thing and restore the system. Then afterwards, we pick up the things where they lie. So that means that afterwards we go and do the paperwork. So the paperwork might not, when I say paperwork, it won't necessarily be paper. It could be, something that's on a computer system, but it's an approval process and an analysis process of what we're doing. Yeah. So that will happen afterwards. Do we see? We do the documentation after. That's with the emergency change. Um, so with a standard change, I hope that's clear. These things happen. We've already written them into a sort of like a manual. This is how we do a password. And so if somebody comes with a password, our people on the service desk can just do it. They don't need to ask anybody. Boom, boom. It has a low risk, and we just do it. Now, with a request for change, this is going to cover our normal changes. With a normal change, we're going to have a paperwork sort of trail. Before we actually make the change, there's a little bit of paperwork has to happen. It starts off with this request for change. And anybody can submit a request for change, but then that is going to go to like a committee. And so they call these a CAB, a change action board. So what they are doing is they will decide on which changes can be made. Now, imagine you're in a company and you've got lots of different kinds of users that are using the same system. You got some people from engineering, you got some people from HR, you got some people from health and wellness, and they're all using the same system. The people from health and wellness, they may look at the system and say, this doesn't really meet our needs. It almost meets our needs, but it's not perfect. We would like to change this module and this module and this module. Well, the people in engineering and HR, they really should be consulted also, because you're changing the system, and maybe it will degrade how that system works for these other people. And so we have a committee that's going to look at those things. They're going to look at the request for change, and they're going to analyze that. They're going to see the impacts that it has on other people, and out of that will come the change. Now, I mentioned before that video, and it's got the cartoon character, which I didn't show you the video, but I'm encouraging you to go and look at that video. In that video, it talks about the 7 R's. Here's the 7 R's. And the idea is that before we actually go and make any changes, we answer all of these questions. Who raised the change? That's going to determine in the hierarchy of the organization, where is this request coming from? Because obviously the higher that source from the organization, the greater authority they're going to have. The reason for the change, is it a systemic thing or is it sort of trivial? The return required from the change. When we talk about return there, they're talking about money. So most organizations, or many organizations, work on a profit basis, and so that means that you put in some money, you expect to get some profit, and so this can happen with changes to computer systems as well, or at least you can reduce your costs. So when we're talking about return from the change, what we mean is that the effort, the money, the investment that we put into this change, do do we get an equal or better benefit? The risks involved with the change, and so that's part of the reason why we had to put this to the committee, because it could be that this change is going to upset some apple carts, and so we have to analyze and find out that resources required in terms of computer equipment, but probably more importantly in terms of people. What people do we have to apply to this, and then who's going to take responsibility for it? I mean, general. So it could be people in house, or we could be outsourcing this work to an outside group, and any other changes. So this would be, we should have some kind of concept diagrams, I guess you could say, but some kind of representation of our system, all the different parts of our system, and then we see, well, how this change is going to affect all of those. That's what that would be. And so once we've answered all those questions, we can sort of apply some kind of priority to that change and see if we can if we should go ahead and use it or not. So here, talking about priority, you can see we're going from immediate. That means that's something that needs to happen now, right now. It's probably because if we don't make this change now, our systems are broken and are not going to be up. Imagine you're working in a bank and there's something happening in the system that the network is down. I mean, that would have an immediate priority, because your bank's going to go out of business if people can't get their money out of the ATMs and stuff like that. So you can imagine an immediate priority, as opposed to, say, a low priority. Yeah, you're in a bank and you have some things in the computer system. Maybe you want to make some little changes to the HR system so that the HR manager can automatically call any one of the employees by just saying their name, into a microphone which is connected to the database. Oh, that's a nice thing. Saves the HR manager a bit of time. It's not going to stop the company from working, but so it has a low priority, and so working from immediate to low. Immediate needs to happen right now. Low, we can wait until we bring in um, our next upgrade of the system. We're having regular upgrades. Maybe we push out an upgrade every year. So this can go into the planning in the next upgrade. Next upgrade, we're going to add that feature. That's a low priority. With our medium and our high priorities, they're going to be about things which we're going to be implementing before the upgrades. These are things that are a bit more critical. And yeah, and so a lot of our decisions are going to be on, well, is this a high or is this a medium? And high will be implemented more quickly. And so here we have that. You can see that, right? So your high priority, as I was saying, key users. large numbers of users are affected badly by this, then that's a high priority. Medium priority, not too bad, and maybe not too many people. But still, the impact, we can't wait until the next upgrade. Um, but with low priority, we will. With immediate, well, as it says, we got to fix that right now. Now, this priority matrix goes with that. The idea being we have things that are important and we have things that are urgent. And the two things that have totally different meaning. And so a telephone ringing, that's urgent. Why is it urgent? Because it's ringing. You answer it now or you don't answer it. You know what I mean? So that's urgent. If you're going to answer that telephone, you have to answer it now. Now, that could be, that's an urgent thing, but that could be not very important. I mean, it could be somebody calling you up to sell you something that you didn't really want. That's urgent, but not important. Um, Now so I'm looking at the low important things first. I'm looking at the bottom here, the low important things. Well, let's look at over here where we have things that are not urgent and not important. So again, we'll go back to our phone and we get a notification on our phone that somebody who we hardly even know has posted something funny on Instagram. We got the notification. It's not urgent because we can look at that when we get home. We don't have to look at it now. I mean, it won't be gone. It's there. And it's not important. And so we probably don't do anything about it, certainly not now. Now, let's go on to the things that are important. Okay, so uh, if something is important and urgent, well, that could be like the system is broken in some way. There's some kind of major incident that has occurred on the system, and so there's an outage now on the system, which is impacting a lot of people. That is important, needs to be fixed. It's also urgent, needs to be fixed soon. Now so that would we would do those things first. Then the next one is things that are important but not urgent. So they would be things like we need to plan um, the next iteration of the software or the next upgrade of the software. Somebody has to plan that, or we need to hire some new people. Okay, so this would be important, but it's not urgent. So we don't have to fix that right now today. We can do that tomorrow or whatever. But we we still should do it as soon as we can, so that we stay ahead in our business. Okay, so the authorization. So change management requires that the people have a request for change. That should be go through an authorization process. Now, that might be by a committee or it could be by individuals, and that will depend on where they are in the organization. The higher they are in the organization, the more they can decide upon. And so that's represented by this diagram here. We see at the top level, people at the top, they can make changes to the system. Well, replace the entire system. They have that kind of authority. So they can make changes on their own. Now, in the bottom, local authorization for standard changes. And we see level 3 where we have a committee, which is going to, the CAB is a committee that is going to look at changes and give decisions on those for the organization there. All right, so we went through this pretty quick. We're right down to the end. That's what I like. I like quick. Um, the key performance indicator is our answer to the question. I mean, and the question I'm talking about is in management, we say, how can you manage something that you can't measure? And that's a rhetorical question because the answer is you can't. If you want to manage something, you must measure it. You must be able to measure it. So our key performance indicators, these are the way that we measure and see if what we're doing is working. And so for change management, these are the things that we want to measure. We want to measure. And so what we would do is we'd keep a record of unauthorized changes. And as we implement our change management, we see if those numbers are going down. If they are, change management's working. If the unauthorized changes are going up, that means that change management's not working. And that means we probably need to look at the way we're doing our change management and maybe fix it. And the same with all of these other things. So If we generally in a business, sorry, in an IT development area, you're going to have change requests come in. We can't fix them immediately, so they go into a queue, a backlog. If that backlog is growing, that means our change management might not be working so good. Um, yeah, emergency changes, etc. Emergency change means that things are kind of out of control. So I'm not going to read through all of those, but I'm just going to say that control, I'm going to leave you with that word, right? The idea of change management is to keep the system in control. So every change that's made to the system is made to make the system better. We're not making sort of changes without thinking about it, without getting the right people involved. Okay. And so when we make our changes, we're also recording what's happening with the change so that we can see if that worked or not. So it's just a sort of a thoughtful process. It's a sort of, yeah, it's a very good idea. There's that quote that I mentioned to you. Change related failure is a number one cause of service. Was that service disruption? So, so in other words, people not using the change process. I mean, this is where we are, right? I'm giving you a lecture. This is theoretical. There's the theoretical world and there's the reality world. In the theoretical world, everybody does change management and they do it really well. In the reality world, well, people get by. You know what I mean? The idea of this and lots of other business ideas like this is it's some ideas for you to make things better. But to be honest, it's easier said than done, isn't it? Because, people they go to work at this in the service desk and they get sort of overwhelmed, and a lot of that planning doesn't sort of happen in some cases, and then they'll have a few months of being able to do that planning well, and they need to take that grasp. I mean, that is really the responsibility of the management is to make sure that this happens. Your guy in the service desk can't do it. It has to come from the management. All right, so I hope that it was found to be useful by students. And any so yeah, the going back to the project, what you're supposed to be working on now is the project plan. You need to show that you understand the question. The question is you have to create a website with multiple pages, and this website is for a hypothetical company that you supposedly own. And that company provides IT service. And so one of the selling points that you're going to make for that people should use your service is because you are ITSM compliant, or so that meaning that perhaps you use ISO 20000, you use ISO 27001, meaning that you are accredited with ISO standards for the service desk. So that's you could do that as a selling point. The other thing that you could do is you could say that you're using a framework. And so you have a few frameworks to choose from. We mentioned those in the first lecture. So it could be like, for example, the MOF framework. More likely, and I would recommend that you say that you're using the ITIL framework. And so in order to do this for your website, then you should gather a lot of information about ITIL and say, these are the things we're doing in ITIL. You should gather a lot of information about ISO 2000, 20,000, et cetera, and then put those into your website. So that's the question. Then how is it going to, what do you need to include? Okay, so include a statement of the work. All right. I need to go look at that other document to get that for you. So yeah, for this assignment, all you need to do is the plan. That's correct, Khulud. You need to do the plan and a short explanation of each point. So you need a plan. Now, here's, newsflash, the plan has milestones in it. You don't have to make these milestones up because the milestones are given to you in the project document, right? So, for example, first milestone is you need to have the plan. Second milestone is you need to have a framework. So the website framework, that would be, what are the folders you're going to use? What are the files you're going to use? What are the pages going to look like? A wireframe. So that's going to be due on the 14th. So there's your one. Yeah. So for your project, First, your plan document is your first milestone. Then your website framework is your second milestone. Then an incident management video is your third milestone. So you have to make a video. So you might be working as a team or you're working on your own, but you can make a video. So I would recommend if you're making a video, there's this software called OBS. If any of you guys are gamers, you might have come across it. The reason why I mention it is because it's free. Gamers use it because you can turn it on and everything that's on your screen will be recorded. And it's recorded in very high quality. I mean, you could use Zoom, but you can use OBS. Um, unless you pay money for the paid version, it doesn't show an image of you, I don't think. But you get everything that's on the screen can be recorded in very high quality. And I've used OBS a few times. Uh, then when you save the if you're using OBS or whatever you're saving your video in, I recommend you put it onto YouTube. And from YouTube, when you do a share on YouTube, you can get an embedded. You can share and copy the embedded code. The embedded code can be put straight into a HTML document, and that will make a video in a box. The way that I'm doing it on my lectures. You see the videos in the box. That's done with embedding. And so that's really easy. And I recommend that too. Another reason why I recommend that is because the video lives on your YouTube channel. It does you don't have to copy it and paste it around the place. All you have is a link which is embedded into your HTML. As long as you've got access to the internet, you can play that video without copying it around. So that's nice. All right. So you're gonna have to make a video. You're gonna have to make a chart flow chart. So hopefully you know how to make a flow chart now. I recommend that you use Visio. A couple of people have used Visio already for that. It's a lot easier than doing it with other things, right? Configuration management, that will be our next topic. So after change management, we'll do configuration management. So all these other things we will talk about as we go from there. But those are your milestones. And so I would just, you could almost, I would use this as a skeleton to answer that plan for the project. All right, so that's now we should talk more specifically about what's in that plan. So that is rubric for task 2. So just like in the first task that you had to do, the way the rubric works is less marks if you only did the stuff on the right, more marks if you did the stuff further to the left. So this is what you want to do. You want to make sure you got all this stuff there, right? So you want to make sure that you got the complete project plan, that you have milestones and that they're in order. The milestones are easy. Copy it from the project description. The statement of work (SOW) or scope document. Basically, in this document, you're going to say, this is what we're doing in our project, but we're not doing those things. This is the boundary. This is all we're going to do. So you're going to state everything you do so that your project doesn't get bigger, so that you only do the things, roles and responsibilities, especially if you've got two people in your team, who's going to do what? um, Logical research. I mean, so with the research, I've been making lots of comments to things that have been submitted in the last week, asking you to use some kind of referencing method like APA or MLA. And so find out about them. And if you'll use those, you'll get the marks. If you don't, you might get dinged on that particular part of the thing on the research part. And also that I might ding you when it comes here, right? On it being in a professional way. Also in a professional way, no grammatical errors. Use something like Grammarly or a spell checker of some kind. And yeah, writing is a skill. It's kind of hard. I won't say that I'm excellent at it, but the main idea is to make it not too long and flowery, right? Make it sort of short. I don't mind dot points, guys. It doesn't have. It's not an English essay competition, all right? Yeah, all sources of information documented. That means do it in a proper way. I don't just want hyperlinks. All right, that's not called documented. And that's, I think, all I need to say about that.